Good morning. It's Friday. Thank God it's Friday, right? September the 17th. And we are very happy to be here. We're joining you with Up to the Minute. And of course, I'm Dr. Tony Rayo Sutherland. And today we have Frank Cooper. Frank, how are you doing?
Happy Friday, my pretty lady. I'm doing good. And yourself?
Pretty good. You're very kind to say pretty. Thank you. Well, I'm excited for you to be here. It's always fun to have you here. Frank is going to tell us a little bit about where you can find us all over the place, right?
Absolutely, Tony. So Monday through Friday, you can check us out live on Facebook Live. We're also on YouTube as well. Hit the notification bell. Find Houston Community College Up to the Minute for all latest episodes and campus interviews. Also on LinkedIn as well. And on the HCC channel, we're on Monday through Friday from 12 and 5 p.m. 12 and 5 p.m. So twice a day, Monday through Fridays.
There you go. I mean, we're back. We're back all over the place. So thank you, Frank. Frank's going to be back a little closer to the end of the show. So just stay calm.
Yes, ma'am. Wouldn't miss for the world.
Okay. So now we have two guests that are with us today. This, of course, is Film Friday. So we are excited to introduce you to Kate Phillips. She is a new HCC film instructor here with the Media, Visual, and Performing Arts, COE. She is our Film Friday guest. Kate, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks so much for having me today.
Well, we can't wait to talk to you. And we know that you also have a film that you're working on. So we get to talk to you about that. Okay.
Great.
All right. So until that time, though, let us go to our first guest, who is Dr. Carla Tyson. Dr. Tyson, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, Dr. Tyson is with the Coleman College, the Coleman College for Health Sciences. That's sometimes a mouthful. But she is the program director for Health Information Services. And she's going to talk to us about that program. What exactly is Health Information Services?
Actually, Tony, it's health information technology. But that's okay. That's okay. It's health information technology. We used to be called medical record librarians, medical record technicians. So our new name is health information technicians. And what we do is we train people to work in the healthcare industry. But if you don't like blood and guts, health information is the one for you. We work in an office environment, but we work in the healthcare setting. So if someone is admitted to a hospital and, you have the nurses, the doctors, all the x-ray technicians and the respiratory therapists working on the patient, what we do is we manage that information that is generated by those healthcare providers. And this health information is necessary for the continuity of that patient's healthcare, as well as for education, research, and billing purposes.
Well, that would, if I were to go into the medical field, it would have to be that, because I can't stand the blood and all that. I can act it out, but don't make me see it for real. Okay. So yes. Anyways, yes. Now, a lot of times we think of it as just, like being a secretary, but it's more than that. You have to learn a lot of things like the medical language and all of that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the prerequisites for health information are basically the same as nursing. You have to have anatomy and physiology, pathophysiology, pharmacology, but you have to know how to take this information that these healthcare providers generate and transpose it into codes. For instance, if a patient is admitted, let's say they have appendicitis, they have a subsequent appendectomy. Well, that has to be translated into a ICD-10 code. So that health information technician has to understand the clinical process that took place for this patient in order to arrive at that code. Another thing that is so important about these ICD-10 CM and ICD-10 PCS codes is that if, let's say that you come into the hospital You really don't know what the physician really doesn't know what's going on with the patient. So the preliminary diagnosis is coded. Then the physician using an EHR, an electronic health record, they're able to then follow the trail as to where this may possibly lead in order to generate the final diagnosis for the patient. Therefore, this ICD-10 code is really important in helping the physician determine the best path for treating and diagnosing this patient. And in order to do that, that health information technician has to be aware, have a knowledge of, and understand the clinical processes that are taking place with the patient.
So it's not like being a nurse, but you have to know just as much as a nurse practically to do this kind of job, right?
Not quite. Nurses have a lot of clinical information.
A whole lot more.
Right. But we have to have a basic understanding of what's taking place with that patient, because this information is vital. If we do not code that information correctly, it's a possibility that that patient will not get the right diagnosis. Therefore, they will not be treated correctly. In addition to that, insurance companies use these codes to determine if they're going to approve and pay for a patient's care or not. So if it's not coded correctly, the patient's care is not approved, and then this patient's treatment is delayed. Or let's say that their medication that they need is not, the insurance company won't pay for it because it wasn't coded correctly. So it's really important that we understand clinical processes, what can take place on that path, so that we can code these patient's records correctly. For instance, let's say that a patient has an infection while they're in the hospital. The doctor doesn't document that the patient had an infection, but the health information practitioner is able to look at the lab values and see that their lab is out of order, and then read the orders, the physician orders, and see that an antibiotic was prescribed. Well, if that's the case, they had an infection. Therefore, we can then tell the physician, would you please document that this patient had an infection so that it can be coded? That will affect the patient's length of stay, because if they have this comorbidity, then they can have extra time in the facility to get healed.
Well, see, so it's a very, very important position. So tell me, what is it special about Komen that you have that you can help the students have a better chance of getting a job and all that afterward?
Komen is a special place, and I say that proudly. All the students at Komen are studying in one of the healthcare fields. We have approximately 17 different allied health fields that are studied at Komen. A lot of people, they only think about doctors and nurses when it comes to healthcare, but it's gigantic. The field of healthcare is huge. Health information, respiratory therapy, dental assisting, ultrasound, medical assisting. It goes on and on and on. So I really encourage anyone who is interested, pharmacology, pharmacy technician, anybody who is interested in working in the healthcare field, just take a look at our website. Go to the hccs.edu and look at what all the different career fields that are at the Komen campus. And again, if you don't like blood and guts, a lot of us don't. Health information, no blood and guts. Pharmacy technician, no blood and guts. Human services, no blood and guts. So there's a lot of different avenues for people that want to be in healthcare.
And you work with computers.
Yes, we do.
You work with people, but not necessarily in the blood and gut area. So it's a lot of different things that you can get into in the medical field. Well, tell me, COVID, of course, has affected everybody for the last, close to 2 years. How has that affected Komen and the health information technology program?
Tony, I'm so glad you asked about that. It gives me an opportunity to brag on our special project that we have going on. We call it the Texas Intercollegiate Virtual professional practice experience. Because we weren't able to get our students into the clinical setting to get hands-on training, and again, health information people, we work in a business office type environment, using computers, do a lot of technical work. However, we weren't able to get into the clinical settings to do that. Therefore, what we did was we collaborated with approximately 10 different colleges, including Texas University, throughout Texas, where our students come together, where they hear from practitioners who have their own businesses, who work in health information departments, who work with the health department. We had the assistant commissioner of the health department come and speak to the students. And then the students also have to do research in the field of health information. They have to do data analysis, and they come back to the body via Zoom, and they present their research. And we also have professionals to critique their projects. We're very fortunate in that we have the Houston Area Health Information Management Association, as well as a representative from the Texas Health Information Management Association, who will critique their work, their research on the days that they present. It has been an extraordinary experience for our students, one that they would have never been able to get if we weren't in this type of environment. So COVID has affected us in that we can't be in the clinical setting. However, we were really fortunate in that we were able to be creative in ways of delivering to the students. So we've come up with this new way of having the students get to do their clinical sessions. And also, we still are able to do remote clinicals with some healthcare facilities because they are allowing us to do remote work with them because the health information field lends itself to a remote setting.
That's wonderful. Now, What kind of credential do the students get?
After they graduate with their 2-year associate degree in health information technology, they're able to sit for the RHIT, Registered Health Information Technician exam that's sponsored by AHIMA, the American Health Information Management Association. In addition to that, there are other credentials that AHIMA, American Health Information Management Association, offers. There are various credentials, and the student does not have to stop at getting their associate degree. They can get their baccalaureate degree in health information management. They can get their master's degree and their doctorate degree in health informatics.
Wonderful. Well, just real quickly, tell us a little bit about how's the market out there? In other words, how quickly do they think they can find a job, and what kind of money can they make, and that kind of thing?
Well, because of the pandemic, it has slowed down somewhat with our students being able to quickly get jobs as they had prior to the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, once they got their credentials, they were sucked up by the industry. But we did notice a slowdown since the pandemic. And I'm not sure if that's because of the onboarding process or if facilities, hospitals, healthcare industry is just not real clear how to bring on our neophytes and get them up to speed quickly.
Well, we're getting through the COVID thing, so hopefully all of that will improve very shortly.
Yes.
Dr. Tyson, we are so happy to have you on the show. We really appreciate it. I learned a lot from what you just said today.
Well, I appreciate that, Dr. Tony.
Okay. Well, we will have information about your program after the show so that everybody who's interested can check it out. So thank you, Dr. Tyson.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to move on to Kate Phillips. As I said before, she's a new HCC instructor for the Media, Visual, and Performing Arts COE and a filmmaker. And it's Film Friday, so it's very important that we have her on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Hello.
Well, okay. We're going to talk about HCC's film department. But first, let's talk to you about your film and being a filmmaker and all of that kind of stuff. Tell us, it's interesting to think, how can a person make a living out of filming in Houston?
That's a very, very good question. And it's something that I've talked to my students a lot about. I only have recently moved back to Houston now. I grew up here and I got my early film training here. I worked on my first sets here and then went to Austin and did the same. But the last 10 years I've been in Los Angeles and in New York, which is obviously a much bigger market with a lot more jobs. And but at the same time, it's much more competitive. And you're finding they're both nexuses where everybody with the same training and the same skills goes. And so I actually found that the kind of freelance hustling skills that I had to acquire in Los Angeles and New York are just as applicable here. It's essentially just a similar, I guess, philosophy that you have to adapt if you really want to do this job, which is simply that there isn't money until there is money. And so you kind of have to figure out a way to cobble together a living in a way that I think I tell my students, everybody has their own way that makes sense, that balances their family considerations, their economic considerations, and mental health and life balance. We all have to figure out a way to do it. A lot of people work on set and do production, and that can be, for me, I find it, it's long hours, it's physically exhausting, and it's insecure because you're always waiting to hear when you get the next job. There's this sense of anxiety about when's the next production, and especially in a place like Houston, you may have to travel to other cities in Texas in order to do those jobs. Still, a lot of people love that. They get a lot of, fulfillment from that environment. And I worked on set for the first 10 years of my career because I learned so much from it and made so many good connections. And it's decent money. If you work on a feature film, I was doing stills photography on feature films, and that's a really great gig because you can make a day rate, but consistently over the course of a feature is pretty good money. So my point is, I guess you kind of have to cobble it together and find ways to, there's like your money jobs and then there's your passion projects. And this short film that I'm working on is a passion project. Anything that you want to kind of establish your voice as a filmmaker and kind of move up to that next level where you're being taken as a writer director. And not everybody wants to do that. Not a lot of people want to work on set or they want to be cinematographers. And that's wonderful because cinematographer is a very creative position, but you're not responsible for producing and coming up with the entire movie. For me, I like to be in charge. So and I've always been a writer director. That's just kind of what I've been drawn to since I was very young, since I was in high school. So I forget what I was saying, but yeah, so that kind of thing for me and for people who do want to be writer directors, unfortunately, no one is going to pay you to do it for a very long time until they do. And when they do, it's very good money. Once you get into a union, once you can get a writers guild, minimum on a screenplay, that's like $75,000, then you're in the money, you're doing well. But in order to get to that point, you have to create work that proves yourself. And so that's why you need to have a balance. You need to have a job, something that brings in the income, that keeps you steady, that allows mental space for your creative work. But at the same time, you need to have that space to be able to create shorts, to write screenplays, to make any kind of project that shows who you are. And I think that shorts are a wonderful way to do that because they're cheaper than a feature film. And you get to be a little more experimental. You have fewer days to shoot with, and you can kind of practice techniques that you're trying to use. And so I really like short films as kind of a proving ground and a way to get your work and your voice out there before you get to that feature film environment.
Well, speaking of short films, you are working on one right now. So tell us a little bit about that and what do you have to do to prepare for all of this? There's a lot of work involved, I know.
Yeah. Well, it's I've made a lot of short films at this point now. So I tend to, I think any short film can be prepped in a month. That's my theory. But of course, you want a little more time than that. But what ended up happening with this was a short film that I had come up with my one of my good collaborators. And that's something I'll say too on the topic of making a living. The more people that you know who are also doing this, the better, because wherever they are, they might be bringing work to you or they may have ideas to work with you on. And that just helps generate your productivity and the work that you're putting out there. So I was lucky.
Networking is very important. Who you know, and it's what you know, but it's who you know too, right?
Certainly, and who you know on the sense of can somebody help you get a job or this or that? But really, the most important thing for me with networking is not about who's well placed to help you, but who do you really connect with? Who are your creative? Who could you sit down with and you can write something together and you're on the same wavelength and you understand each other. Who's a producer that shares your philosophy? Who's a cinematographer that shares your visual sensibility? And those are the people that I think are crucial to have, because this is a collaborative medium. So to that, I was lucky. I did work a lot of jobs. You kind of do those assistant jobs, those grunt jobs in your first, I'd say 10 years of working. And because of that, I now have a strong network of connections, and I'm better equipped to freelance because I have that many more opportunities for, jobs. I do this marketing job with, I'm always doing like 10 jobs at once, basically. If you want to make a living in film, you have to be willing to work like 10 jobs at once. If you like an office job, a little security, maybe not for you. But
I remember my younger days being in freelance. I broadcast and film, yes. But as you get older, you want a little bit more stable. But yes, that's very important.
Yeah, I'm glad I battered myself against the wall when I was in my 20s. And now I value my sleep. I really need all 7 hours of it. It's very important. So, but I did work. I had a job when I was in Los Angeles that we had a British office. So I ended up getting to know the assistants in the English office really well, just over phone. And then we became friends, and we've become lifelong friends, which is really fun. So one of my friends out in the UK, he also was feeling the same thing that I'm feeling, which is you constantly go through these cycles where you have this work going in the pipeline, someone's going to finance your script, things are going, and then all of a sudden just everything drops out and you have nothing. And that's why as a filmmaker, you have to be willing to constantly generate. And so my friend Sam in the UK, he said, I've been trying to just make a lot of shorts. I don't care what it is, but I just need to stay active, and I want to act. I want to direct. I want to write. I don't care what it is. And so I said, well, I want to direct another short. And I think it'd be really fun if we wrote something together and then, we acted in it together, because it's something that I thought it would be fun to try. Like I said, a short film is a great place to try something like that. And I think writing and acting are very similar disciplines. You're kind of working from a similar place of getting into the character and kind of, and becoming them, really. So we thought it'd be fun. So we wrote this thing together, and we were going to film it in September. Of course, with COVID, he isn't even able to travel to the US right now. British citizens are still not allowed to travel to the US. So he had volunteered to do it, and I thought that was really cool of him. But unfortunately he wasn't able to come. So we pushed it to December. And that's kind of it's always a choice with any film, with a short film, with a feature, with anything that you're making. You always have to make this calculus, because when you're about to go into production, when you're about to go into production on something, everything will fall apart. You're going to lose your main cast.
Expect it.
You're going to lose all your actors. There's going to be a storm. There's going to be, your location's going to fall through. And that's happened to me on every short film. And at a certain point, you do have to say, we're just going to go. We're just going to go with what we have, and we're going to we're going to have a plan B, and we're just going to go with that. With this short, I felt like it was more important that I work with Sam than bring in someone else who was local, because we had built it together and it was something we'd really wanted to try. So I said, let's push it to December and see where we are with the travel things then. But I'm really trying not to push it much farther, because once you start pushing something, you can push it ad infinitum. So, you kind of have to be willing to just pull the trigger at a certain point. But this one, so it ended up giving us a little more time to prep it. And so going back to your question, we have had a little more time to do some revisions on the script and do some pre-visualization work with my cinematographer, and to do some location scouting. I'd had a location in mind, but now I'm going to kind of broaden my net and do a little more scouting and make sure we really have the absolute best choice. That's the luxury that we now have with time. So I'm grateful for that. And I think it's going to yield like a better result in the end.
Excellent. Real quick before we go, you're new at HCC, and we do welcome you here, by the way. Tell me a little bit about the first few weeks. I mean, I'm an instructor. I can tell you what my experience was, but what are your plans, and what have you experienced so far? Just very quickly.
Well, I started last year in the middle of COVID. And so I've been teaching online completely for a year. And now this semester, I'm really looking forward to getting in the classroom. I just haven't been in it at all since I've started at HCC. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to do that in October. But it's going really well. I found that since I'm teaching the writing classes and I love writing, it can be taught over, the online interface pretty reasonably well. It's not like there's any gear that they have to work with. And it's almost, there's a lot of exploration and conversation that we can still have, which I really like. So I really enjoy it, but I am looking forward to being on campus, just to have that, especially with the writing class as well. Like I was talking about, one thing I try to encourage my students to do is to find that community of people that really resonate with them, or they like their ideas, they like the way their mind works, they work on similar genres, and that's a little bit harder to find that connectivity in the online environment. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, just kind of continuing to foster and bring to the writing classes and to those that want to be writers and writer directors of the students at HCC, because I think that they just need to find each other and get together and start making stuff.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we're running out of time, but we could talk to you forever. But thank you very much for being on the show. And I'm sure that we'll have you back.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was great.
Thank you. Now let's go to Frank. Frank, we got some things we got to tell the people. Congrats to HCC Adult Education Literacy. What is that all about?
Absolutely. So HCC Adult Literacy is one of the 9 nationally recognized programs by the Advancing Innovation of Adult Education project of the U.S. Department of Education. So all now will be announced during the National Adult Education and Family Literacy Week next week in Maryland. So it's the first among a list of 9. So Career for You Academy at Houston Community College, which helps adult learners access high demand occupations in its 5 sectors.
Okay, great. And we want to remind everybody, we're running out of time, but you're running out of time to register for Second Start, okay? It starts September 20th, which happens to be Monday, but we extended a couple of days there. So you got a little bit more time, but not much. So register now for Second Start, hccs.edu/now. And next week, we got a whole bunch of things. HCC's Fire Technology Program, Bergeron Bordeaux, excuse me, is going to be there, and a couple other things, right, Frank?
It'll be Mental Monday, Health Month, or Health Week. So we'll get 2 for HCC's own Dr. Becky Hari of the Counseling Department will join us with their words of wisdom, but also Employer Significance honoree for her more than 40 years of ACC.
Excellent. So we've got a whole bunch of things next week. Don't miss it. You'll be missing a lot if you don't make it. So anyways, we're going to tell you bye for now, but have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you Monday. Okay, bye.